Welcome to Dollars and Cents with Freedman Financial, the home for financial advice in a language you can understand. Created by Marc Freedman of Freedman Financial, he and his team of certified financial planner professionals will discuss timely topics that help individuals and families make smart financial decisions. And now, get ready for this week's edition of Dollars and Cents with Freedman Financial.
Welcome back to another edition of Dollars and Cents with Freedman Financial. My name is Marc Freedman.
And I'm Marion Gilman.
And we're here to provide you with some financial advice in a language you can understand. Well, this week has been a lot of stuff about money in the news this week, especially with the Powerball number hitting, Powerball jackpot.
Well over $1 billion at this
over
point.
$1 billion.
Yeah.
It might even hit $2 billion.
Yikes. Has it ever? I don't know that it ever has hit $2 billion.
I don't know.
Who knows?
But I find it fascinating to watch on the news and to listen, social media, whatever, of all these man on the street interviews. And they said, have you bought a Powerball ticket? Well, of course I did. It's almost $1.5 billion, or soon to be $2 billion. I said, well, if you won, what would you do? And I'm oftentimes floored by what people say if they won $1.5 billion. What have you heard people saying that they've won, Marion?
Well, a lot of people will say, oh, I'm going to buy a nice house. Okay, $1 billion will buy a very nice house. I'm going to buy a house for my kids, whatever it might be.
Yeah,
usually a new car.
Yeah, I don't think people realize how big $1 billion is.
Right.
Because
it's hard to conceive.
It really is.
A number like that.
Okay, Taylor Swift, worth more than $1 billion.
Right.
Bill Gates. You can name people that are worth more than $1 billion. Robert Kraft, who's someone that's local. But think about it. Would $1 billion change your life? Oh, it would change your life in more ways than you could possibly imagine.
Well, it's very interesting because there are numerous studies that show many people who win very large lotteries, whatever, as in, it's usually not $1 billion, but even hundreds of millions of dollars, they actually go bankrupt after several years. And you think to yourself, how could that possibly happen? But again, it's very difficult to conceive of that much money and what that money can do for you.
So yes, there will be some people that will win a lot of riches. There are athletes that get these big contracts and then they go bankrupt.
Yes.
We've seen all of that. But think about this. You just find out that you just won $1.5 billion, whatever it is. Oh, it's only $700-800 million after taxes. Okay.
I'll take it.
Right. But here's the thing. You want to buy a house? Do you realize a house is like buying a candy bar at the local grocery store? That's what buying a house would be. Actually, probably buying several houses for that price of that candy bar as it relates to the $1 billion. Right. What I think we need to begin exploring is, this crazy philosophy around why does everybody want to buy a Powerball ticket when it gets to $1 billion or $1.5 billion, when you could be buying lottery tickets today with the opportunity to win $5 million. I think, now I am not encouraging you to run out and buy lottery tickets. I'm not encouraging you to do this. But if someone handed you $5 million, would that change your life?
Of course it would, for most people.
For most people, it would change their lives.
So I would say at least 95% of Americans.
And the reason why, if you won $5 million on a lottery ticket, do you know that the vast majority of people who buy lottery tickets are people that really should be spending their $2 on a lottery ticket somewhere else?
Absolutely.
And because if you're in the low income of America, and frankly, that's a lot of people, almost 50% of this population, you're buying a lottery ticket with the hopes that your life will change like that. But we see here at Freedman Financial many people who receive an inheritance. And our clients are far from super wealthy. Yes, perhaps they live a lifestyle where the income that comes into their household is more than what they need to spend. And so they're able to save some money. But Marion, perhaps you could share some perspectives on people that have received inheritances that are significantly larger than the net worth that they already have. And how has their life changed?
You know, it's fascinating. And we've had this discussion with many clients because, you know, there are these instances such as receiving an inheritance or selling a business or, you know, investing in some stock where it just really goes to the moon, where you're working at the company or something. So these people achieve a level of financial success that they never imagined. So do they change their lifestyle? When you ask them, what are you going to do? Most of them have a very modest goal for that money. They are not anticipating changing their lifestyle at all. Because think about it, if this happens to you when you're in your 50s or 60s, you've created a certain lifestyle. You have a certain group of friends. There are certain things that you do. And hopefully you have created a very enjoyable, comfortable lifestyle that you love. If you all of a sudden have significant amounts of money, that actually can create friction in that lifestyle. So if all of a sudden you change your habits, you're not going to be hanging out with the same friends anymore because they don't have the wherewithal to go to maybe the same restaurants or live in the same neighborhoods.
Or travel the same way you might want to.
Exactly, exactly. So it's highly unlikely for our clients to actually change their lifestyle.
Yeah, and then the other thing that we see happen is if you realize that, well, I now have this money and I can do whatever I want now. And you have this, like you said, this circle of friends, this collection of people that you've been hanging out with. Yes, you could spoil them and say, you know what, we'll pay for everybody to go. But at some point, that becomes uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
It becomes not uncomfortable for the person that's trying to be generous. It's the people on the receiving end.
Yes.
They say, how do I give back? I know I can't match them financially. What do I do? But you almost feel obligated to do something, and that is far from what the generous person wants you to do. That wasn't the intent. And it creates, like you said, frictions.
Right. It's just, it becomes, I mean, I personally know that if somebody were trying to pay for everything for me, who is a contemporary and never did that before, sure, you know, maybe they do one thing to celebrate, and that's great. But if it's constant, it would be very uncomfortable that somebody else is almost, you know, dictating your life and you know, telling you what we're going to do.
Yeah,
so, yeah,
you know, like I said, we try to, when we're doing financial planning, we're trying to build a strategy that allows you to live the lifestyle to which you've grown accustomed. And if you win the lottery, or if you win in it, you receive an inheritance, or whatever it might be, like you said, for most people, it doesn't change their life that much.
Right.
There are things you'll want to do to celebrate off the cuff, you know, within the first year, 2 years. But after that, you develop this lifestyle. And so you have to ask yourself, and this is going to be an interesting question for you, because we ask it of our clients all the time, is how much is enough?
That's right.
How much is enough? We're always trying to say, well, how much does it mean to be rich? How much does it mean to make a lot of money? And usually the answer to that question is twice as much as what I have today.
Right.
All right, so let's say you do that. You were making $100,000 and now you're making $200,000, or maybe you're making $200,000 and making you $400,000, or maybe you have a net worth of $2 million and it goes to $4 million. Are you now going to say, well, that's really not what I thought it was going to be. I need to get to 8. I need to get to 16. I need to get.
That's what typically happens.
That's what happens. But we begin to realize that when you're doing that, you've changed your lifestyle. And that might work for you, but how has that impacted all of the complexities of relationships with people, family, where you choose to live, all of that stuff? Do you want that?
And also, do you quit your job? I mean,
right, many people say that.
Yes.
If I win the lottery, I'll quit my job.
Yeah, and I, you know, honestly, eons ago when I was in a different profession, Every once in a while, it's, oh, maybe I'll win the lottery tonight. And my employees would say to me, well, what difference would that make? You're still coming to work tomorrow. We know you. You know, you would never leave.
You got to do something, right?
And that's right. So work provides a lot more to your, psyche than just money in many cases.
And I know this is kind of somewhat tongue-in-cheek with some of these things because, look, you'd love to win the lottery. The thought, the prospect, the opportunity of having this inflow of money is there. But it doesn't come without any strings attached, without complexities. I was sitting with a client this past week, and we talked about what would happen if you won the lottery. Because she asked me, did you buy a Powerball ticket? And I had bought one last week. I thought it would be fun to do it, but have I been doing it right along? No. She says, oh yeah, I bought a Powerball ticket. I said, well, what would you do if you won? She says, oh, well, number one, I'd build a small cottage. Get this. This was $1.5 billion. I'd build a small cottage on the land where my house is, so one of my relatives could live there. I mean, that's a couple $100,000 to do that. Secondarily, I'd give a big chunk of it to an organization so that they could build shelters for a lot of homeless people. I said, great. I said, how would you go about choosing that? She says, well, I'd just choose somebody. I said, oh, would you? Because if that is your money and you're giving that money to somebody else, what do you want in return? You know, one thing that you want in return is to make sure that your money is being used the way you wanted it to be used. And when you have that much money, you know everybody's going to know that you have the money.
That's particularly if you win it through Powerball.
That's right. And so I said, I happen to know that you're generally not the most trustworthy, but a person that trusting person of others. She says, yeah, you're right. And I said, so how could you make sure that the people you give this money to would be so trusting?
Right.
And these, it's a story. It's a discussion point because look, over the next few days, as long as the Powerball continues to grow, you're going to see a lot of man on the street interviews of people saying, what would you do if you won the money? And it's an easy thing to say. I'll buy a house. I'll buy a Ferrari. I'll buy the Red Sox. I'll buy a business or whatever it is. But you know what? It's not that easy.
Well, you do know that the whole system is actually built on people imagining what they would do with this money because again, as everyone knows, the chances of winning are minuscule.
So small.
So as an economist, you think about the rational man. It's not rational to spend your money on Powerball tickets. That is not a rational use of your money. However, everybody does it because it's a very small amount of money, and your payoff is enormous. So it seems like a small price to pay, but it's not a rational thing. So you got to think about it irrationally and imagine what this could create.
And imagine, right? So you imagine for the big number.
That's right.
Isn't 5 million a big number or 1 million a big number?
Of course
You could buy those lottery tickets all day long.
But it's not as exciting.
It's not 5 million. Oh, it's not enough.
Right.
I will tell you, you win $5 million. It's
be
pretty
very
darn
happy.
exciting. It's pretty darn exciting. $2 million is pretty darn exciting. You win $1,000. It's pretty darn exciting. And that, folks, is financial advice in a language you can understand. If now's the time for you to get serious about your financial planning and or investment management needs, we'd love to talk with you. Our phone number at the office, 978-531-8108. That's 978-531-8108. Or you can visit us on the web, freedmanfinancial.com. That's Freedman.
2 E's and a D.
Financial.com. You can go to the bottom of any page on our website, put in your name, your email address, and you will get our free weekly newsletter that lands in your inbox every Friday morning at 10:30. And hey, I also want to point out to you, if you go onto YouTube and you search Freedman Financial, man, I didn't even realize how much content we had on our YouTube channel. You want to see any of the old podcasts. You want to listen to all of our old radio shows. You want to listen to little videos that we've done about a variety of different things. It's all on our YouTube page under Freedman Financial. That's going to do it for us this week. We will see you again next week with more financial advice in a language you can understand. Have a great day, everybody.
Enjoy.
During today's episode of Dollars and Cents with Freedman Financial, your host may have discussed specific financial planning and investment ideas that are for general information only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations. Please remember that investing involves risk and may include loss of principal. Always consult a certified financial planner professional, qualified attorney, or tax advisor prior to investing to determine what is appropriate for you. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA, SIPC.